London and New York are arguably two of the greatest cities in the world. I was born and raised in one and I recently moved to another. So in this video, I'm going to be comparing them unfairly, just giving the amount of time that I lived in each. I have a lot of observations. I won't be getting into all of them in this video. This is just a start. This is one that probably doesn't come top of mind when thinking about the differences in cities, and that is rodents. I see less rats in London. Again, I haven't been here that long, but I see less rats, and I think that's probably because there's less garbage on the street here, and then also there's a natural predator for rats out here. Y'all have foxes in London, and we don't have, I can't think of a natural predator for rodents outside of someone's pet cat or the cats in the street. I've seen foxes walking across the street with rats in their mouth, and I've never seen anything capture a rat in New York City. New York City rats are not a joke. They have no fear. You can like step towards them and they won't budge, and I feel like the rats in London, they actually have some fear in them because they have to fear for their life out here. I know there are rats out here, and I know, like, I think I've heard about like people having mice issues like in the center of the city in their homes, but trust me, there's that too in New York. I just think that they're less bold and less prevalent in London. Let's get into size. This is a really short one. London is huge. London is huge and no one talks about that enough. It is twice the size of New York, and I don't think most people know that. When I heard that for the first time, I'm like, twice the size, do they mean just the city? But no, it's twice the size of all of New York City. You can tell. And it also has around the same population of New York City, I believe. So it's less dense than New York City. There's like a lot of density in New York that I have not found to be true in London, which I actually really enjoy. So yeah, London is big, and I don't think we talk about that enough. Walkability. As someone who loves to walk, this was so important for me moving out of New York. It was important for me to move to somewhere that is walkable. And London and New York both deliver in that department, but London is prettier. I hate to say it, but it is. I think New York has really great neighborhoods. The West Village, there's Chelsea, there's Bed-Stuy, there's Park Slope, there's Brooklyn Heights. There's just so many cool places. I haven't even touched on Queens because I'm not super familiar with Queens. I'm a Brooklyn girl. They're both walkable city. I think London is a more enjoyable city to walk through. I went on a 3-hour walk the other day, and I walked through Hampstead Heath, Regent's Park, Primrose Hill, and it was like so lovely. And the neighborhoods in between them as well, really beautiful. I don't think you can get a similar 3-hour walk in New York City. I really don't. You can get close to it, but I don't think you can get that full experience of, oh my God, everything's just so picturesque. So walkability, they both have this. I think London is prettier in that regard. It doesn't mean that it's better, but I'm someone who enjoys seeing pretty things. London is up there for that. London is quieter than New York, which honestly is surprising for how big of a city it is. New York had an earthquake last year, and there was this meme that summarizes so well how much New Yorkers do not have peace. It was basically just saying New Yorkers get such little peace that when an earthquake happens, we just assume that it's something that's a part of our daily lives. We are so not used to peace and silence and calm, and that's a generalization. There are definitely loads of places in New York where you can get silence. I think like a lot of the apartment buildings are really great at double glazing, and there are apartments that are really high up as well. So like you can escape the noise in New York City, but there's just a lot of it, and you're just sort of become used to it. You can become used to it, or you learn how to drown it out pretty quickly. This is a weird one. Christmas. So again, I hate to do it. London does Christmas better. Okay, just point blank period. It is a whole entire vibe, and it probably has to be because there's no sunlight. They're like, you have no natural light, we're going to give you Christmas lights. It is a whole vibe. In New York, all I can really think of is Rockefeller Center and maybe Fifth Avenue, some of the stores being lit up. I am a jaded New Yorker in a sense. I just walk through New York City and I don't realize the new things, so I could be wrong, but in my experience, all I really remember is like Rockefeller Center, like the skating ring there, and then a couple lights on shops, and of course some street lights up top in certain neighborhoods, but they don't go all out like they do in London. I am sorry to say, London goes in for Christmas, and I deeply appreciate it. It has sort of awoken something in me this Christmas, and I just felt full of Christmas spirit, and I don't think I've felt that in the last couple of years. So London goes hard for Christmas. Green spaces and parks. London wins in this. This is not a competition. This is just like observations. But if this was a competition, London would win with this. I mean, again, London is twice the size of New York City, so it's probably an unfair advantage it has with that. The quality of the parks, I think, are better in London. Don't get me wrong. Prospect Park, Central Park, there are parks in Queens, in Bronx that I have not even been to. They're great parks. But I do think London is way more intentional about providing green spaces. I'm also in North London, which I think has a plethora of green spaces that are amazing, but I'm sorry, New York. London takes the cake with this. This one I would actually love to hear opinions on, and that is the fact that art, or I should say theater, in my experience is more accessible in London than it is in New York. And to be fair, I wasn't exactly a theater girly in New York, but that's because theater felt inaccessible to me. I want to hear other people's opinion because I would say I mainly went to Broadway plays, and there are way more places to go see theater in New York. There's obviously all the theaters off Broadway. There's St. Anne's Warehouse in Brooklyn and a bunch of other places I'm probably not even familiar with, but it's just based off my experience with Broadway, it just felt very inaccessible to go to theater outside of like say Broadway week. I remember when I was younger, before they had the lottery on your phone for Hamilton, I would go and wait outside the theater for Hamilton for a month. I would switch off with a friend for a month. We would go and wait for tickets to go see Hamilton because we couldn't afford it. And I think that's something that's less likely to happen in London because they want this kind of work to be accessible to everyone. I feel like there is a more intentionality in London around making sure that theater is affordable to most people. That's not there in New York City. Would love to hear about other people's experience in New York. I think if you actually look harder in New York, you can find deals, and I didn't look hard enough. But I also feel in London, you don't really have to look that hard. They have The Devil Wears Prada in the West End, starring Vanessa Williams with music from Elton John, and I could get tickets for literally 25 pounds. I think in London, it's just common for theater to be affordable, while in New York, you have to make more of an effort to look for it. New York is easier to navigate, just point blank period. The grid system in New York is chef's kiss. London, I am in Google Maps still to this day. I've been to London a few times before I moved here, and I would think by now, a few months in, I would know a few places like the back of my hand. And there are a few places like my neighborhood that I do, but London is tricky to navigate, man. It's not really straightforward. It's actually rather confusing for me at least, and it's something I hope to get a grip on eventually. New York with its grid system is easier to navigate, and I love that about it. Public transportation. I think one of the most important things in major cities. London and New York differ quite a bit. I think London is cleaner. I think London is slightly, I just got here, so my opinion might change. I think London is slightly more efficient than New York. In London, you pay by distance as opposed to per ride. As you do in New York, you're paying $2.75 per ride. Has it gone up? I know everyone makes a big deal about the fact that London's tube stations aren't 24/7 most days. I personally do not care. Also, my line is open relatively late. I think it closes at 1 a.m. I'm not sure if that's the same for all the tube lines in London, but for the line that I'm on to get home, the last train I think operates sometimes shortly after 1 a.m., which I think is pretty reasonable on weekdays. And then for the weekend, there's weekend service, which is 24/7 for certain lines. My line is on that line, so it doesn't really hinder my life. If I'm staying out past 1 a.m., it's typically on a Friday, Saturday, and then the line is open around that time. If I had to choose between the two, London is definitely winning when it comes to transport, just due to the fact of cleanliness is better. I have not seen some of the things that I've seen in New York in the subway yet. For example, I have seen people defecate and urinate in New York way too often, way more than I should have, honestly. And I think that's just a norm in New York. You don't really blink an eye at that. And I haven't seen that in London yet. Hopefully I haven't just jinxed myself. But yeah, when it comes to public transportation, I think London is winning. They're both great systems. There's no other public transportation system like New York City in America. And I think that really says something. Have I been borderline traumatized on the New York public transportation system? One would say that. I've seen some things I shouldn't have seen. They're still both great. I do prefer London just due to the cleanliness. Oh, also in London, there's a cap on how much you pay for the day, which I think is really cool. While in New York, you can travel, you could go back and forth all day and you could rack up $20 on transportation, which honestly, I don't think that's really likely. Everything you want to see in New York is typically relatively close. So I don't think that's super likely to happen, but we don't have a cap in New York. If you are from London, I would love to hear your opinions about the public transportation because I'm brand new here and I'm comparing it to New York City. I would love to hear both sides. I think it's so interesting hearing about other people's opinions about the same place. Honestly, these are both amazing cities. I think that's an objective thing to say. As individuals, we're all going to have our individual experience with each city. So our positives and our negatives will differ. And I think there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. Also, if you have any tips for a New Yorker in London, please leave them below. Alrighty. Thank you for watching. Bye.